Hey guys, Brian delivers you the goods here. Decided to return to you for this album review tonight, and this is for the long-awaited studio album we've been waiting for Bruno Mars's fourth studio album, and it's been a decade since he's dropped his last record, 24 Karat Magic, which this is going to be for the romantic. So I'm going to discuss what I listened to for his 9-track album, which is only like 31 and a half minutes. It's not a very long record. And I'll let you know my thoughts on Bruno Mars's follow-up to 24 Karat Magic, The Romantic. So let's dive into this album review. Now, this was an album that was long overdue, and fourth studio album that was long overdue for him. And I'm glad he delivered, because this album was really good. Risk It All to start things off was another strong track. Well, a strong track, I should say, to open up the record. I really enjoyed Bruno Mars' singing. I enjoyed how the melody is sounding. Sounds pretty soothing from time to time, but it does have some good hooks on it that I can get on board with his vocal range. So, pretty strong track, 5 out of 5. Cha 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 is a good dance song to really enjoy. It reminds me of a 60s song, like the Backstabber song. You might know who I'm talking about. It's an older band, of course. But they had rhythm back in the day, and this song does have rhythm too. But overall, this track did flow. It worked very well for how it sounded. I mean, a few melody changes when the chorus hits, but it sticks to the original melody and it flows structurally and in a good way. So 5 out of 5. I Just Might was the only single that he dropped for this record, which I'm very pleased that he only dropped one single for the record, because it made us really anticipated and excited to see what the other 8 songs were going to offer. And this was another good track. I really enjoyed this song. It is a 5 out of 5. Really enjoyed how Bruno Mars was singing this track. And overall, for the execution and everything, it did very well. So this is a 5 out of 5. I enjoyed it, and definitely go check out my track review for it. I think it's a 2-track reviews video I did for this song, and another one on January 9th. I'm not sure. I think I did this one standalone, but I'm not sure. But I did enjoy I Just Might. Really catchy track. Does flow, has rhythm, and I really enjoyed the pacing of the track too. God Was Showing Off is the next track, and that was another good one. Does have a good beat to it, and Bruno Mars sings this very well. So, and the backing vocalists do very well with their vocals, backing Bruno up in this track. So, really enjoying this track. So, 5 out of 5. Why You Wanna Fight is another good track. I mean, some of it, I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about it, but it progressed and it got a lot better as you keep going through the track. So it's a 5 out of 5. Really enjoyed this track. Definitely flows. One of underrated song that I really can get on board with. On My Soul is a pretty catchy track. I think Why You Wanna Fight was the only longest song on the record, but it did work for how it sounded. But to get back on track, On My Soul is a 5 out of 5. Really enjoyed Bruno Mars' singing in this one, and I really enjoyed how it's structurally sounding, pacing, melody-wise, and how it's executing too. It does very well for the execution. So this is another 5 out of 5 for this track. It does work. Something Serious was a pretty good song. I mean, some of the lyrics kind of threw me off a little bit, but I did enjoy it for how it sounded. There was some sexualized lyrics from time to time, but it does work for the execution with the whole pacing and the melody and the flow of the track does very well. Another 5 out of 5. Nothing Left started off very mellow, but it does progress as you keep going through the track, and it flows in a good way to where I can really dig this track. So, as the second to last song on the record, did very well. So, good track, 5 out of 5. And finally, Dance With Me is the closing track. Probably my least favorite, but not the worst thing I've heard. It's a slow dance kind of track, and I can appreciate that. It's just not one of my favorites, but not a bad closing track in its own way. So it's a 4.75 out of 5 for this one. I don't know, I just the fade outs and some of the songs are pretty solid. Like Something Serious had a good fade out, or it was, I think it was On My Soul that had a fade out, if I'm not mistaken. Um, Meaning it had a fade where it just lowers the volume and closes out the track that way, is what I mean to say. And this one had the same thing too, but it does work in its own way. So yeah, Dance With Me is probably my least favorite, but not the worst song on the record. So it's a highlight in its own way, but it has some execution flaws at from time to time. 4.75 out of 5. Not the worst, not the best, but a pretty solid track. Overall, production, mixing, and execution wise, I think Bruno Mars' Romantic is a really strong record. I think this was a great comeback record from him being away for 10 years. And I think he worked pretty hard on this one and put his heart and soul into this one. And it worked very well. He did originally work with Anderson .Paak on this record, and a previous collab album he did with, I think it was Anderson .Paak or something like that. But overall, this record did very well. I think this is one of his best records to date. I mean, some of his older material is still a highlight, but execution-wise, I think Bruno Mars pulled it off with this record. And if I were to give Bruno Mars the Romantic a score, I'm giving it a strong 9.5 out of 10. Really good record. I'm definitely going to remember this album for a February 27th release. And definitely check this out at midnight, because it's definitely worth listening to. Definitely has some good dance music to it. Good R&B and soul music, and overall it works with the drum work. And there were some electric guitar solos too that I really enjoyed off this record. And structurally, it's a really strong record. So 9.5 out of 10 for Bruno Mars The Romantic. I hope you enjoyed this long-awaited studio album review. I know we all been waiting for him to follow up 24 Karat Magic for the longest time, and now that we got a fourth album, this was almost a perfect record. I mean, almost for me, but it's still a very strong record. So yeah, 9.5 out of 10 for Bruno Mars The Romantic will be on my best albums of 2026. And with that being said, thanks for watching this review tonight.